This afternoon, I am in Irvine, California, visiting with Jessica Wimer, who is the Associate Dean for the Law Library and a Research Professor of Law at the University of California here in Irvine. Jessica, you were appointed to your present position in July 2015 after having served as Assistant Dean and Director of the Law Library for a year and Acting Director for a year prior to that. It is our custom, Jessica, to begin these conversations by asking a little information about the person with whom I'm speaking, sort of as a person.
Yes.
So could you tell us a little bit about your life, perhaps not just today, but even when you were younger?
Sure. I've lived in California since 2001. I came out to California right after I graduated library school, but I spent most of my life in Indiana. So I grew up probably from second grade on in Indianapolis, and then I went to Indiana University Bloomington, and I went there for everything. I started undergrad, and then I went to law school, and then while in law school I started library school my last year. So I was down there for quite a long time. When we were little, we moved around a little bit, so I've also lived in Atlanta and San Jose, California, and I was born in Wisconsin, but most of my life has either now been in Indiana or here in California.
Well, I suppose moving out here to the greater LA area, since you'd lived out in this general area before you knew this, you will seem to eliminate shoveling snow in the winter.
Oh, that was actually the reason I landed in California. My last year of law school, it was my last year of law school, or library school. I can't remember which year it was. In December, it snowed 16 inches, and my jacket, my winter coat, the zipper broke. And I said, that's it? I want no more winter. So at that point, I decided any future of mine was either going to be west or south, just not in the middle, or east, where it was very cold. And I was really lucky that while still in library school, USC was wanting an entry-level librarian, and they did an ad for that, and I applied, and I got the job a couple months before I graduated. So I was super happy.
So you were happy and relaxed in those last few weeks.
Oh yes, yeah, and it felt fantastic. I look back at that time really fondly.
I imagine some of your fellow students were still worried about that aspect of life.
Yeah. So I went to library school after law school. So by then, most of my law school classmates had graduated the year before, spent the summer taking the bar, and most of them already had jobs. But my library school classmates weren't necessarily as lucky, but it just felt fantastic. And exciting, because I was about ready to leave Indiana and go to LA, which seemed big and overwhelming.
Well, it is big and overwhelming in a way. I've been in the traffic here the last couple of days, and I can tell you that aspect of it is both big and overwhelming.
I do not miss I miss Los Angeles. I loved living in Los Angeles. I do not miss the traffic. Yeah.
Well, you're out here in God's country. We drove around. My son was traveling with me on this trip. We drove around out here, and the ocean isn't very far, and it's beautiful places that probably most faculty members can't afford with their normal salaries.
No, we are lucky here. Well, first, you are correct. Maybe it's because I'm not from here originally. I just appreciate it so much. I was at the movie theater a few weeks ago, and I was going down the escalator to the theater, and there I looked out and I saw the Pacific Ocean and I saw palm trees. And I've been here 17 years now, and it's still overwhelmingly lovely.
Well, I can understand, having looked at it both here and looking at the ocean at the East Coast and up where I live in Washington State. It's a nice experience.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Robert and I saw the sunset over the Malibu Pier the other night. It was pretty, and all the lights came on, and all the tourists were running around.
No, I can't believe I'm so lucky to be here.
Well, if I could follow up on
Sure.
the question, I know that I suspect I'm safe in suggesting that you do not have a hobby in snow blowing or anything. But do you have any hobbies or special passions that
Yeah.
you do? In case the dean's watching this, outside of work.
Absolutely. Well, all of my hobbies would not work at work, but so yeah. So I do run in the mornings. It's sort of what I do to clear my head, and it's sometimes where I come up with my best solutions to problems. I've run almost every day since I was 18, so it really is something that I feel is something I have to do. I like to do yoga. For a while, I was taking guitar lessons.
Oh.
So I took classical guitar lessons for about 5 years and stopped maybe a year ago. But I was just so horrible that I just am not musically inclined, and it took so much effort, and there was such little progress that I decided that I would just enjoy listening rather than attempting to do it. I also do like the theater. I really like dance. In fact, I have dance tickets tonight. And so just those kind of things. So nothing that I could sneak in at work.
Well, even if you could, the dean probably is occupied with other matters and wouldn't catch you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But on the other hand, others in the place might. And,
Yes.
as the head of the library, you have to behave above suspicion in more ways than one, or you give them too much power over you.
Yeah, I do try to set a good example.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard, but yeah.
That's the way it often is. Well, you've already mentioned your 3 degrees and where you earned them.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of intrigued that you sort of had a plan, it looks like,
Yeah.
while you were in law school at least, to continue with the library of science.
Yeah.
And can I ask you about perhaps how you came to that decision, and more particularly, did anyone play a role in that?
Yeah, so I knew when I was an undergrad pretty soon that I wanted to go to law school. So that was always something that I felt that I was called to do or driven to do. So that was never a question. When I was an undergrad, I took a research class. I remember I needed to fill a credit one semester, and they offered this research class, and it was taught by a librarian. And I loved that class. That was one of my favorite classes. And I felt like, I would really like to be a librarian, but I also knew I really wanted to go to law school. So it didn't, at that point in time, it never occurred to me that you could combine the two. Then I did go to law school, and I happened to have known one of the librarians through a mutual friend of mine. His name's Ralph Gabler. He's at Indiana University. And so I knew then, after talking to him, that it was a possibility. So anyways, jumping forward, after my first summer job where I worked for the city attorney, I decided I didn't enjoy it that much. I think that I didn't enjoy that part of the work. I think now looking back, it was probably just the situation more than just practicing law. But then I really started to wonder if I was getting into a profession that I would really look forward to doing every day, because I'm much more of a consensus problem solver, and I really realized that law was being an advocate, and sometimes that didn't mean trying to come up with the best solution together. So regardless, so then I started talking to Ralph about what he thought about being a librarian and what he thought about the career, and he really encouraged me to explore it. And then I also had, in my personal life, I had friends of the family who were very supportive of everything that I did. But so I was able to start taking library courses while in law school to decide whether or not it was a good fit. And I knew right away that it was definitely something I wanted to do. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like an interesting story. Now, you became a sort of a reference, not a librarian, but a technician type or a intern?
At IU, yeah.
While you were still in library school? Or was it
Yes.
right after?
Yeah, right while I was in library school. So Indiana University Law School they were just so great to me. I was so lucky. So yes, I went to library school and I had a graduate fellowship in the undergrad library, but then I also was able to be an intern at the law school. So I did that the last year while I was in library school. They let me work at the reference desk and take on different projects. And so it was really good experience.
I had much the same situation. I was a reference librarian at the law library, actually a regular librarian at that point, even though I didn't yet have the library degree. I had the law degree. And it helped keep things calm when the classes seemed sort of a bit much. And then I stepped back into the real world and said, well, this is what I'm really getting into. That's good. So that kept me going. Well, you've already mentioned that you moved out here right after school from Indiana and snow country or whatever, at least in the winter. Although this year it's, I think, been snowing back there a bit longer than usual, but in any event, you came out here and became a law librarian one in research services at the University of Southern California's Gould School of Law. Can I ask you a little bit about that experience? And I'm thinking of the day that you probably worked with Albert Brecht.
I did.
Yes.
So I was at USC for 8 years, and I started as a brand new librarian. And I think, without a doubt, working at USC from the beginning, and that opportunity really set me up for all of the opportunities that I have. Without that job, no question, I wouldn't be here right now. So I did work for Albert, who I learned so much from. He was not always easy to work for because he had really high expectations.
Oh, I understand that.
But because of that, I learned that if you work really hard and you do really good work for the faculty, that they really appreciate it and they really think of you more as a colleague than someone who's working for them. So I then, from him, learned that it's possible I can do really hard things and work hard, but I also was appreciated. And there were a few faculty members who really became invested then in my well-being and my career, and so that was very fulfilling. It didn't take too long. Within a couple of years at USC, I moved from the entry level, and then they promoted me to the head of research services. So then at that point, I really took on making sure the reference department was running as it should be, and I was supervising other librarians. And then I coordinated the preparation for the first year legal research class. So there was a lot of things that it was my responsibility to make sure things worked well. Faculty were happy, and the student class was done and completed and done well.
I had the pleasure of working with Albert many years ago. Actually, I was a librarian. He was a law student.
Oh,
and,
really?
My boss and I were instrumental in, well, at least maybe my boss was, Al Coco. You may know the name. We sort of recruited Albert into the field, and he went up to the University of Washington and got his library degree, and after that came, I think, his first job may have been USC.
I think it was. Yes, I think it was. Albert taught me so much. He taught me that hard work would pay off. He taught me to really what high expectations were, and I've tried to transfer much of that here to UCI because I really saw how the law school community, the staff and the faculty, valued the library. He also had a dignity about him and a sense of the world. And so for someone who felt, from Indiana, from even Indianapolis is not a large city, watching Albert live and exist and be Albert was really enlightening in terms of, I don't know, like I said, he kind of had a dignity about him. So I feel so lucky that I got to work for Albert.
Well, I think that projection of not just competence, but sort of the whole ambience that
Yeah.
he and others, and
Yeah.
hopefully yourself,
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
is helpful not just to you as the head of the library, but to all those within the library who work under your direction,
Yeah.
because that sets the tone for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
And I remember there are a few possible exceptions. I remember years back in my own career, we had a reference librarian at Yale when I was there, Charlie Smith, and faculty members would seek him out because he did a bibliography helping them get started in
Yeah.
research. It was masterful, and
Yeah.
they just really appreciated it. And they also sought him out when their book came out, because he also was the keeper of where the books in the case down on the first floor hall of faculty writings,
Yeah.
and current faculty writings, where things would be placed. And I used to just, I had an adjacent office, and I'd watch and listen.
Yeah.
They'd come in, basically, let's go down to the case, and they had their book in their hand, and just hot off the press. And it was funny, because these were people, who were luminaries in our field, and they were behaving like little boys and
Yes.
girls.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, human nature.
Yeah. It is. It is. It's fun to watch the faculty.
Yeah. Well, one of my questions that I traditionally ask is about mentors, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming Albert likely is one.
Yes. Yes.
You mentioned a fellow at the library in Indiana.
Yeah.
Maybe he's another, I don't know. But do you have any mentors, including maybe ones I mentioned, or one or two of them?
I do. I'm so lucky to have been surrounded by really amazing people in my life, and I do have a number of mentors. There's someone, she's not at all related to, she's actually someone that I knew in Bloomington as an undergrad, and I worked for her. I babysat a lot for her, and I did other work for her, and she's a mentor of mine, because she started her own business and is she actually did the opposite. She moved from California to Bloomington.
Maybe her hobby is snow shoveling.
Right, exactly. And so she's been invested in my career, in my well-being again, my whole life. And so without Trish, I would have never gone to law school. So she's a mentor, definitely. And to this day, whenever I accomplish anything that I feel is more significant, she's one of the first people I call. But in terms of mentors professionally, of course Albert was a mentor. I learned more from him than I realized until actually I came here. And when I came to UCI, that's when I realized exactly how much I learned from Albert. Paulina Ronis, who is the current director.
His successor.
Yes. She is probably the most significant mentor I have in professionally. She's, from the first time I met her, she made herself available to talk to me about anything. If I was struggling with work, with anything, she really gave good advice. She's helped me. She knew I was interested in doing library administration, and she was very generous with her time and supportive. Knowing that would mean I would leave USC, she still really...
Well, a good mentor, that's what they want to see in the protege.
Yeah.
I think.
I
you
agree.
want them to move up.
Yes.
It's credit to you in part, maybe undeserved, but you think you're getting it anyhow if they do well.
Yes. And to this day, I still... I consider her a mentor more than a colleague, because I still look to her I think she just is so smart and handles things so well that I seek her out all the time. And oddly, even though Melody Lemke, who I actually supervise, in many ways I consider her a mentor as well.
Well, she's been around since a few years ago.
Yes.
She and I were on the board of ALL together back in the 80s.
Yeah. And Melody knows her job better than anyone knows their job. And, she's the Associate Director for Collection Services. Yeah. And that is not my area of expertise. And she is tireless and has the most patience of anyone in the library of explaining things to me and potentially re-explaining the same thing a number of times. And so UCI would not be where it is without Melody. And so I do consider her like a mentor.
Well, as a director, associate dean, whatever the
Yeah.
title of the era is, it's nice to have subordinates to yourself who are really skilled.
Yes.
And I had started out where I worked, and after some years, I ended up with a whole bunch of librarians who were all mid-career, and some of them have been with me a long time. I stopped having to worry about them. I mean, they knew their business,
Yes.
and they made me look good, and that was exactly what I was hoping for.
It's great. We are actually, the UCI right now has a lot of librarians who started here when the school started
Yeah.
in 2009. And so it truly is one of those situations where people just know how to do a good job and they're invested. Now we do have to start planning for Melody's retirement, which I don't want to think about, but that will happen.
Well, unfortunately, given the difference in who's the older party to the other, is it probably works out. I did that. I fled from the rest of them.
Yes.
Almost all of them. I had a couple retire before I did, but yeah, it's nice. And I would recommend it to her that retirement is great. 6 months after she does retire, she'll try and figure out how she ever had time to do any work.
Yes.
Time for that.
I'm actually looking forward to that at some point.
Well, sort of getting back to your career here at the university, you came here in, let's see, July 2009, if my notes are correct.
That's correct.
As the Associate Law Librarian for Public Services. As you say, that's your forte.
Yes.
And from being a reference librarian and all that up
Yes.
along, I'm somehow not surprised. And you were in that position until April of 2013 when you became the acting director. Can you tell me a little bit about how things were, what you did, accomplished perhaps, and maybe even learned while you were basically in the associate position?
Sure. So as an associate director, coming to UCI, it was a little bit unusual because I wasn't going into a position that already was in existence. When I got, I was the fourth employee at the library hired. So we really had to figure out everything. So my job was, at that point in time, had a lot to do with understanding UC system, UC policies, hiring new librarians, helping figure out what services we would offer to faculty and students, all while the school was growing, right? So the first year there was, I think, 8 or 9 founding faculty. I forget now whether it was 40 or 60 students. But it was just this very small group. It was just beginning, and that was I never realized how much thought. Well, I did realize, but it was so stunning about how much work had to go into actually just starting everything from nothing. Even from how to check out library books, how to work with the main campus, how to work with others.
You probably thought in library school, I'm going to go into an established operation and we'll just continue what things are doing just the same way, because that's the safe move. And
Well,
you came in here, there wasn't anything to continue. You were it.
I didn't even know that would potentially happen, right? It just didn't occur to me that so a lot of my job the first couple of years was really just helping establish policies and practices, hire librarians, library staff, create strong ties with the law school. So that's one of the things that I think of the parts of my job that I do better or worse. I can list a lot of things that I do worse, but I have been able to really reach out to others and let them know that the library is available, from senior staff, assistant and associate deans, to faculty, to staff members. It's something that it's really important to me, and that's what I spent a lot of time doing as the associate director.
Well, you know, knowing what I've read since I've been retired 15 years now, so I sort of missed some of this current era aspect. But starting with about the time you came here at the university, there was a tremendous change in the legal profession pushed by the recession of 2008. and then the ripple effects into the academy.
Yes.
And so you have come in at a time when that had occurred, or was maybe still occurring, and then of course the transformation of law libraries from, traditionally all books to now, some books, a lot of them, but all the digital stuff. And that had been underway for a while, but not as it started to develop in this this new century as it is still.
No, that was if anyone ever thought that they would decide to have a career as a librarian because it seemed safe and established,
Wrong choice.
Wrong choice. When I got to UCI, not only was the legal profession changing in ways that was making it hard for students to find jobs, which meant fewer students were applying to law schools.
Mm-hmm.
The UC system itself, it was the economic crisis of the time. We were in the
That's right. The state didn't have a balanced budget in those days. And
No.
now they do.
Well, in the whole country in 2009, 10, it was not easy times.
It was quite a disruption. Yeah.
It was. And so when I started at UCI, I was immediately put on furlough. So yes, I had many reminders of all of the risky choices that I had made that I thought were safe choices. So
Well, that'll be your landlord or your mortgage holder understood that furlough meant you might be slow that month.
Yeah.
Payment.
Yes, everything worked out fine.
Oh, that's great. Well, you were here, you worked basically setting up the public service end of the operation, or with others perhaps, and then you moved up the ladder as the top job opened up and tried it out for a while, or was it they were seeing how you did in that job, perhaps more realistically? And you want to talk about some of the differences and some of what you're doing all about now?
Yeah.
I hope to achieve in the coming, well, if I go out more than about 2 years, we'll both be guessing.
We will both. So one thing I want to make very clear is even as the associate director, I just helped make things happen and helped move things forward. I was there to make sure personnel problems were handled, policies were created, but it truly was and is to this day the people who do their jobs in the library every day that has created the library that we have. It's the amazing team of reference librarians. It's the staff at the front desk. So I have helped make sure that I solve problems, but I get no credit for the wonderful work that they do.
Actually, you do. Because your job as Associate Dean for Library Director is to empower them to do exactly what they're doing. That brings kudos to all of you.
Yes, and I do know I am the one who has to be the heavy and has to have the tough conversations, but they just do a great job. And in terms of being acting director, so we were talking about mentors earlier. I left out probably the most significant person outside of libraries, but within law schools, and that's Erwin Chemerinsky. I worked with Erwin at USC, and then he hired me down here, and he has just played a huge role in my career and has been endlessly supportive and encouraging and has given me so many opportunities. He just, whenever he could, gave me new opportunities to take on additional responsibilities or to grow. So I became acting director when the current director at that time was out for medical reasons. So she was out for a little bit, and they put me in the acting position. Because she had been so busy teaching the first few years, I had largely been doing a lot of what already, but my job itself.
Sort of running the library for that model is not totally unique to this institution.
No, so my job actually didn't change that much. It got a little busier, but the authority changed in the sense that I actually
responsibility.
I was the one who made all the decisions, and then I was answerable to others. So I was. But it was a little delicate in the sense that I was just acting, and I knew she was going to potentially come back, and so I couldn't do things radically different. And then they found that they wanted to start up an LLM program at the university, and because she has foreign and international law background, and it was an amazing teacher, is an amazing teacher, she's still here, they moved her over to the LLM program, where I was interim and eventually became assistant, and then they turned it into a faculty position and became the associate director. So throughout that point in time, the differences in my job had to do more with being able to then make some policy changes that I liked, and none of them were super significant, but I let food in the library, and little things that I've
Bad habits that some people think you thought maybe in today's world it would be considered good.
it would yes,
And you're right. I think.
students love that,
Yeah.
and then I was able to make a few little changes in terms of the ways things operated that, I just thought my view of this is a little different. And then the biggest difference is once my position became a faculty position, I started sitting on faculty committees and participating more in the faculty end of things than I had before.
Governance and,
Yeah.
yeah, that sort of thing.
Yes, so I've been on a number of committees, admissions committees, LLM committees, building committees, and that over the years
You're
has...
taking on the ones with all the work.
Yes, no, you have, yes.
Especially that admissions committee.
No,
reading
next-
files and
Yes,
stuff.
yes, I've spent hours reading files. I believe it's almost a given that I'll be chairing the committee next year, so I don't even, it's gonna be a lot of work.
So
But
you've done a good job, obviously, so they know what they're getting.
I try hard.
At least deans of law schools don't make that kind of decision too casually.
Yeah, well, and then I also sit in the senior administrative meetings at the law school, where I get to hear, where we talk, me and the other assistant and associate deans and the dean talk about common problems in the law school and solutions. And that to me has been so great in terms of reminding folks when the library can help solve problems. And just even being part of those conversations has allowed us to do really neat things with the law school. And I think now it would be at the position, if we went away, people would miss us, which is where we want to be.
Well, it gives you networking throughout, not just the library, but the rest of the law school. And maybe at some point, maybe we've done some of this and get involved in some of the university-wide stuff.
That is something where that's, I think, the next step for me.
Yeah.
It's a little more daunting. It's been the law school is such a small community, very friendly. I feel so lucky to work with great faculty and great administrators and staff, that I feel like there's almost no one in the law school I couldn't go to and ask questions, or the university is so large, but I know that that's something that I need to be more active.
You would really, if you say you've done these things internally and you've enjoyed them, you would enjoy some of that too. Not too much, because you have your day job.
Yes, yes,
And
definitely.
your other day job here,
Yes.
but
Yeah,
it would be a nice experience.
yeah.
My last meeting, just as I was retiring, my last day at work, I was in the guise of the chair of the faculty senate at the University Board of Trustees meeting, speaking for the faculty. And I started at the other end of the curriculum, or the continuum, and down at the bottom, and I worked up to the very top.
It's interesting. I was recently invited to a meeting on campus where there were people who had taken on extraordinary leadership roles throughout their career. And it was so nice just to even be in that room and to hear people talking about what opportunities they have taken. And I think the nice thing about being there, they were talking about some opportunities on campus, and the dean was there, and she was able to say to me, well, if you're interested in any of this, should let me know.
Well, the other thing you learn is that they're just folks like yourself.
You do.
Yeah.
Yes, it's great.
All these luminaries up there somewhere in the stratosphere.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, let me look quickly at these notes. You teach in the law school, I believe. Can you tell us a little bit about that role?
Sure.
The more formal part of teaching.
It's a 1 credit class. So this year I taught 2 different three. This year I taught the normal legal research class, which is a
Okay.
mandatory class in the first year.
Somehow it sounds like you would have the right expertise to do that.
Yeah, well, I would hope so. I feel like, though, the further I get away from my life as a reference librarian, the more I lose some of that expertise. But I do my best. And that was something I was very involved with at USC. So I feel, but yeah, so I teach the 1 credit legal research class for the 1L students. This year, I also taught legal research and writing class, or I co-taught this class to the first year of LLM students, or inaugural LLM class. A colleague of mine who taught lawyering skills and other classes to the 1Ls, she and I had worked together in other classes at UCI, and so we decided to co-teach the LLM class. I did that this year. I don't know if I'll be doing that part again because we're still working on that curriculum. And then I've started to do a number of directed research classes, one-on-one with students who are interested in just working on their research skills. And so this year I've taken on more teaching. Teaching load that we have is significant in the sense that it takes a lot of time to prepare for the legal research class for the 1Ls because they all have to take it. But it is not, I am not expected to teach with the same course load that other faculty do. So they're very generous.
That's pretty common.
Yeah.
I mean, you, as I said, you have your day job and your other day job.
Yes.
Well, you got to be realistic.
Yes, yes. I really, though, enjoy the teaching aspect in the sense that I really enjoy working with the students, getting to know the students, and I also enjoy having maybe one class where they can breathe a little easier because the rest of their schedule is so overwhelming that it's nice to be able to provide them the opportunity to learn something that's a little less pressured. The one thing that I think they don't exactly appreciate how important the research skills are until they go away, and so sometimes
Then they take their first summer job and they come back in Panicsville.
Yes, and so I think they wish they would have paid more attention or appreciated the class more, but that's just the nature of students.
Of course.
Yeah.
Except for ourselves.
Oh, I was perfect.
You and I were perfect students.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So wonder my ex-dean hears that, he'll come storming in.
Yes.
Oh, that was funny. Now, you have also developed, you've been working in our professional associations and so on. You were president of the Southern California Association of Law Libraries. I shouldn't say this on camera because others will sort of, but that's one of the criteria, you know, because you're a younger colleague to me, 2 or 3 years or something.
Yeah, just a couple.
Whatever. And so in trying to assess if we wanted to talk to you on camera for this project, we looked for people who've had some involvement outside into the broader profession, and you've done some of that. So do you want to talk a little bit about some of that, including the Southern California Working Group on Law Libraries and Legal Research, which I noticed is one of your things, and it intrigued me, so I'd like to hear about that too.
Absolutely. So I cannot overemphasize how important it is to learn from your colleagues and create ties to the librarian community locally, especially, but nationally as well. You know, Albert really encouraged us to be active in SCAL. It was almost expected, I think, and and I think so many of the great things I do go back to USC, but and I learned quickly that I could create really strong ties with others, not only in law schools but law firms, and learn from them, learn how they're doing things, ask for advice, and so that has just been important since I started. And so I quickly I was treasurer for many years on SCAL, and then was the vice president, the president, and then the past president. So I spent more years on the board than I'm sure they wanted me there. But
oh, I would be so sure. I've noticed how popular those who say yes to being nominated become, because the others say, "Oh, better that person than me this year."
Yes, and I think especially in the vice president role, you have to plan the SCAL Institute.
Yeah,
which
that's
is
a fairly complex one.
Yeah, and it's 2 days, and so yes, it's something. But I really enjoy staying in contact with my SCAL colleagues. I'm not as active in SCAL in terms of their board activities, or even sometimes it's harder for me to get time to get to the meetings like I used to.
Yeah.
But the colleagues that I remain in contact with, or that I wouldn't know had I not been involved in SCAL, it's just amazing. I can think of 10 people who I consider friends and colleagues, and then valuable resources. And or if we send students to certain firms, I can call someone up and say, "We're sending this student. Take care of them." Or
and they're friends, so they
yes,
behave that way rather than someone who's being put upon.
Yes, absolutely. Nationally, so in AALL, I try to sign up to be a committee member at least, either an ALSIS or just a normal committee. This year I chaired a committee. I think I've been asked to do any number of chairs, co-chairs, etc. And then in terms of the Southern California Working Group on Law Libraries, that's a co-founded entity. So that was an idea of Laura Kedra at Loyola, Paulina Ranas at USC, me, and Kevin Gerson at UCLA. We really wanted to have an arena where the LA, Orange County area law libraries could meet in a more intimate setting, a smaller setting, and more casual than a formal institute or meeting, and discuss common problems or issues. And so we try to annually either create a program that really discusses things of interest to law libraries at that time, even if that means talking to firm librarians. Or on some years where there's not either logistically it's difficult to do a day program, we'll have a smaller meeting of just us co-founders talking about certain topics that we've designated. So in fact, I just sent out the email last night asking what our program was going to be this year. Normally the planning starts in late March, so I guess it fell off the radar. But yes, so that will be something that hopefully we will do.
Maybe your phone call asking what it was going to be was the catalyst to get it started.
Yes, absolutely.
So you played a role, even if it was not one you had been thinking of playing.
Exactly. So.
Well, it sounds like you've been involved, especially locally. I mean, there are lots of libraries, law libraries in this town, and maybe something you've learned that I think is the case, and many, is that we have a lot more in common with other types of law libraries than some of the stereotypical prejudices that we've seen over the years in the association would suggest is real.
No, I've so much enjoyed getting to know my colleagues both here in Orange County and up in LA, but there's no problem is unique, I feel, and so someone else has come up with a solution. So it's so worthwhile, just a phone call or creating colleagues that you can ask for advice is really valuable, or just even the support if you're dealing with a frustration.
It's a shame for you that Albert, who's no longer with us, he got ill and passed away. But otherwise, he'd be within reach of an email, a contact, or a telephone call if you had a question. You might just be sit here and think, well, now how would Albert do this? And you've got your answer, but come up with one that you're not sure. It'd be nice to have been still able to call him, but you have Pauline and some of the others.
Yes, Pauline, Kevin Gerson at UCLA, because he's also at a UC library. Kathleen Vanden Heuvel at Berkeley. I just have amazing colleagues that are endlessly patient and giving of their time. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, that was a characteristic I always found very much to my liking of our profession, or our niche in the broader legal education, legal profession.
Yeah,
that was nice. Well, you learned a few more things under Albert and others, and that is one of them to be involved in literature, scholarship, however you want to phrase it. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of your writings and
sure.
some of what you're thinking there is?
Yeah. So, that's the one area that I feel like I haven't been able to devote as much attention to.
That's because you got those 2 day jobs plus anything else that comes up.
It takes writing. For me, is something that I enjoy good writing, and to do it well, it takes a lot of time and thought. I've been able to do book reviews, and one of the faculty members at USC, I did a lot of work with her on her article, and she named me co-author. And I've written a few smaller pieces, but nothing significant, like a journal.
You did do a chapter in Hankey's
I did.
book, and that's forthcoming, I think,
is
or has it come
forthcoming.
out now?
I believe it's still forthcoming, and that was very fun. I enjoyed doing that. I have some ideas about things that I would like to write. We recently, last year, we switched some of our bathrooms in the library to gender-neutral bathrooms.
My son, who was here visiting, I think I mentioned earlier in the session, he noticed that when he went to one today.
Yeah.
I said, well, you probably better get used to it, because we're getting them up in Olympia where we live. It's pretty much into the liberal trends of these
and
things.
It is, but that was surprisingly complex.
Yeah.
And so there are a number of things that I would love to sit down and be able to give attention to, and I hope to. I really hope to. That's not a large expectation of my job. Unlike other law library directors, I think some have a bigger publishing push than I do, but it is definitely something that I wish I could give more time. I try to do my part. I edit the Scal newsletter. If I were offered another chapter in Hankey, I think I probably would eagerly take that on in the future. And like I said, I have a few little articles floating around up there. But
you're still relatively new in this profession, to give you credit for reality, Jessica. But your time will come for some of this stuff.
Yeah. A lot of I do feel like a lot of what I had many of the earlier years here at UCI was so busy learning on the job and just trying to get things established that there wasn't a lot of time to look up. But hopefully I'll have some time to.
Well, you were basically building the library from scratch.
Yeah.
You and your colleagues.
We were.
That you'll look back on, I'm sure, and think, boy, those were fun days.
You know,
even though they were scary while you were going through them.
I can't. Very few librarians actually get to have that experience, and I'm so glad I did. Yeah. I know the way libraries function so much better than I would have without it.
Yeah. Well, that's a wonderful sort of a cap on your career, at least up until today. You get a few years ahead of you, quite a few, I'm afraid. I recommend retirement. I recommend it only after you've really been working long enough to get ready for it in all senses of that term, the good ones at least. So we're probably nearing the end of our conversation this afternoon.
Well,
but
thank
you. If there's anything that that we haven't brought up that you would like to mention, this is your golden opportunity, Jessica.
I think we've covered everything. I've been so happy in this profession, and I'm so lucky that I found my way to it, and I'm so lucky for all of the wonderful people that I have met, and I truly feel like any success I have, it comes because I've had great colleagues, great mentors, and people who love me. So I'm just so glad to.
Well, I think that's the key to success.
Absolutely.
In life as well as work.
Yes, and thank you for putting this together and for spending the time. It's been fun.
Well, actually, I'm the one supposed to thank you, Jessica Wimer, for being part of today, for letting us set up here at the university. There were parking arrangements for me. It was a wonderful experience. And thanking you, I'm doing it not just on my own behalf. I'm the one that gets to travel around and do some of these, but on behalf of Michelle Wu, Frank Hodak, and Dick Spinelli, who are our colleagues with whom I am working and have been working for a few years to develop this oral history of law librarianship for the Hein Online database, Spinelli's Law Library Reference Shelf portion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.